we're talking about this foundational principle. The external is a perfect mirror of your internal, right? And I remember when you first said that in one of the in-person classes that we were doing, and like I remember the strength in the tone of your voice when you spoke it, like it was coming from this like very deep and real experiential place, and it really like resonated with me really strongly. And like as you fleshed out the idea, it like kind of like blew my mind, right? And and that's something that we've repeated like over and over again in like all the different courses throughout the programs. But it's funny, right? Like now that we're building out this foundational practices course and looking at the principles and trying to like explain them in the most like succinct and articulate way possible, it's like these are the questions that come to my mind, right? And
Which is awesome. Yeah.
it's like last weekend I was sitting down and I mean literally we just had like a movie on, and I was like, I knew that I had spent so much time working on the relaxation is power one that my head was just like, I mean, I could feel it. I have a pretty good sense of it now when I've done so much work internally, whether it's energetic or intellectual or whatever, where I just hit a saturation point and those
Right.
ideas and everything need to like settle into me. But so I was like trying to just like, okay, I need to give myself space. Not gonna think about it. But I wanted to work on the next one because I knew like, okay, probably the external is a perfect mirror of your internal needs to come before relaxation is power, right? So, and I'm like, okay, but even if I was going to sit down and start writing it, like, here are all the questions and arguments that come to my mind, which means that those questions and arguments actually still exist in my subconscious and
Right.
haven't been resolved. And I don't understand it clearly enough to like, even though, like, and the funny thing is, even though I have had a lot of experiences, like enough experiences that would like that are, let's say, um, that demonstrate to me or reflect to me that it's that things are not just physical cause and effect only, right? Like that's the thing that I think that like people in general struggle with, is that like we all perceive like synchronicities, or we all perceive like things happening. It's like Joe Dispenza talks about like how when you work on creating something new, how you get to the point where you accept that it will most likely come in a way that you could not have thought of, right? Because you're actually like extending yourself into the unknown. So it's like you understand, from experience, you understand that like to say, oh, well, if I do this, this thing will happen physically, and it's probably going to happen that way. And you transition to a place where you're almost like, I'm going to do these internal exercises. I'm also going to take action in the direction of the thing that I want. I'm going to be congruent with what I want by acting it out physically. But I also am going to, at some point, it, come to expect that the way that it will come about is not a way that I'm expecting, which is to say, I'm not going to necessarily be able to make a causative link between, like, I could say like, oh, this thing happened because I did this thing, right? But like, but most likely it's to some degree come out of the blue, or somebody's come into my path that I wasn't expecting, or I mean, you know what I mean,
Oh,
right? So
absolutely.
like we
Yeah.
have all this, let's say, evidence that we know that there's some other mechanism working in our life that's beyond just like I push a ball, it rolls across the table. So
Right.
so just and when you say like, okay, here's the principle, the external is a perfect mirror of your internal, like these are all the questions that come up. And so I feel like I should almost like read them off so that if somebody's listening to this later, they can like know, like, or maybe we could just start going through them or whatever. I mean,
Yeah, that's what we should do. Because I mean, I think they all deserve some discussion. That's the
uh-huh.
point that I think is I was excited, by the time I got to the second one, I was like, yeah, this is really good because it's like it poses the questions that I think, most people would have if they were truly, whether they believe it or not, right? Like again, I mean, I say this to people all the time because my teacher used to say it to me all the time. It's like, don't believe me.
Right,
It's like check it out for yourself, do the thing, and then see what your results are. And don't lament if it doesn't turn out the way you think. It's like there are a million techniques, and one of them will produce the thing, the end result that you're looking for, right? But don't believe me, experience it for yourself. And
right,
his teacher would always say, not everything can be explained, but everything can be experienced. That's
right,
that's a huge little statement, It's like we don't always have the articulation to, even and every time I'm trying to explain something to somebody and I think, oh, that was right on target or whatever, or somebody goes, oh, I got, like epiphany, whatever. It's like, and you're getting, 1% of what the experience actually was, because most of it is so all encompassing that you can't untangle it. You're losing the whole, right? For like a view of the little, right?
right. And I think I mean, it's a good point, but in the throughout the foundational principles and practices thing, like anytime I sit down to write, I feel like the object of my writing and in this process is not necessarily to give a bunch of conclusions or things to believe in,
Right.
but to make sure that, like, when you're practicing, you're not distracted by questions in your mind, or like things that you're confused about, what, like questions, points of confusion, because all those points of questions and confusion become distractions, right? It's like,
That's right.
why am I doing this? Why is it important? I don't understand what I'm supposed to be focused on. How is this going to help me? You like,
Well, you have this idea that you're going for, right? Like even if it's not completely fleshed out, you have a general idea of the end result you're looking for, right? And so that becomes your thesis, right? And then you're running all these experiments to try to prove or disprove the thesis. What I like about this so much, devil's advocate is an incredible, you know way
position.
to do this, right? Because it's like it's just like an extension of Kabbalistic analysis, right? Which is like you're asking anything that you like have a hiccup on, it's like that's a question. That's your subconscious sort of going like, like, oh, that doesn't line up with what the way your conscious mind is thinking about this. There's something in there that doesn't line up. And when it doesn't line up, that's throwing a breaker, right? It's like that distraction is bleeding off energy, right? It's like, and so you have to be able to, formulate a question about that, an antithesis, right? And then, work it through, right? And that means this dialogue of, it's a lot, sometimes it is a lot easier doing it with another person than it is just doing it on your own, right? Because your mind, your conscious mind is pretty tricky. But remember, it it is the devil's advocate, right? No matter how much you say, oh, I want this, your conscious mind is going, you can't handle the truth, so it's like, it's like squish you, it's like we're going to give you so many things to tie you in knots that you can't actually perform this, because when you have a question about something, that means you don't know, which means you haven't had that experience, right? So that's a logical train of thought, right? So because for us, for hermeticists, to know, it means to experience, right? It's not an intellectual knowing, it's an experience of that phenomena, whatever it is, right? So until we have the experience, everything is theoretical. right? It's just, one is maybe a little bit, you know, uh, occupies a little more space of positivity than something else, right? It's
Right.
like,
And that's the
that's the whole
idea
thing.
behind these principles and the practices, right? Especially with the principles, it's like it's not trying to say like here's the experience, here's the knowledge. It's like here's how to clarify your mind to help you facilitate the experience more smoothly, let's say, or like give you a container to hold it in when you have it so that
Right.
can be expressed in an even more clear way. I mean, I think the word like clarity like constantly just keeps coming to mind for me because I think it's like the most appropriate word. I feel like it's most aligned with that idea of truth, but clarity is a description of a quality of your perception, right? It's like
Eh,
you're experientially perceiving the
Yes.
truth for yourself, but this is just helping to like, like
And
clear the path.
remember, in the Castaneda series, right? Like clarity is the second barrier,
I
right?
never knew I always understood what he meant by fear is the first barrier, but I never understood what he meant by clarity is the second barrier.
Because if you're not clear, you're not going to get through that.
But it was weird how he described it. Like
It
it
is.
almost makes it seem like he was saying when you have clarity, that clarity itself is a barrier somehow
Well,
to.
again, it's like you can play both sides of that fence, right? So it's like, let's say you have a person that has like, let's say in Castaneda's case, again, if we go back to his example, like he was so adamant that he knew what was happening, that, and he felt he was so clear about this cause and effect phenomena, that that boulder of clarity in his mind was keeping him from going through it, because he couldn't even see that there might be something else on the other side.
Right.
So that, that digging your heels in and sticking to your guns without ever even entertaining the idea that there's something else is just another form of obstacle, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
like you have to be willing to, experiment, right? It's like, I mean, I hate keep bringing up these, analogies, but it's like, I forget which one it was, but it was like one of the Harry Potter movies where it's like, uh, the potions master is like, teaching them how to do this thing, right? And he's like, oh, this, the elixir of death or whatever, some horrendous thing, right? And he goes like, and Harry's got the old book with all these little, they all have the book that they're supposed to go through the exact formula laboratory experiment to produce this thing in the end result. And the end result is told to them what it's supposed to be like, what it's supposed to resemble, all of the appearances of it, and what it's supposed to do, right? And so, but it was only him that had all of these other little side notes, and so, but he was willing to say, oh, I'm going to just check this out, because, crush instead of cut. Like everybody's trying to cut those beans and they're screwing off everywhere, and it's like, and then he's like crushing them the flat of his blade and getting out the juice and putting it in. And finally at the end, he's like, oh, this is perfect. Nobody's ever done this before on the first try. It's like, I do believe, this would kill us all, It's like all very happy. So,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like
right?
right, right,
He
right.
puts the little leaf in and it just goes,
Yeah.
and
Right,
so
right, right, right.
it's
Yeah.
that idea of like entertaining something that maybe you're not even sure of, right? I mean, that's the whole mindset of experimentation, right? Like the best inventors experiment with things that are so outlandish by formal standards that nobody entertains those ideas, because they think because if it happens, they have to rewrite everything that they thought was true before that. And that's a huge thing. That means, it's very unnerving to think that the basis that you've made your life on, it has no real, it's not all encompassing in your, in your reality, right? That there are other things. It's very, very, um, unnerving for people to think, it's like we see that with archaeology, right? Like nobody's willing, they'd rather bash all these guys that are putting out all these new ideas because that means they'd have to rewrite all the stuff that they had before, or disavow them in some way, or saying this is what we thought back here. Like nobody does that with medicine. Nobody does that with real science, right? It's like, hey, we thought this is where we were with the technology we had. This is what we thought. This was the best thing that we could come up with at the time. But then when we found out this stuff, well, now we know that that was just a footnote, right? And now we have a much better understanding of this thing. So they have no problem sort of using, it's all steps. You can't, these giant leaps are few and far between, right? But the threatening part of that is that then you're going to have to say, oh, Jesus, all this other stuff that I thought was true is maybe just, relatively true, but it's not absolutely true, that
Mhm.
these things happen. So but, we're kind of living and breathing in that environment all the time. It's like we're willing to put ourselves in these experiential situations, these experimental situations, to see if the experience will blossom into something that we would rather experience than what we're experiencing now. You know, that's the whole thing. And so, is it worth it to us, even if we get, and are the experiences that we have, and even the progress of having, failures or whatever, if at the end that, we don't achieve what we're looking for, was the experience of going through that still worth it to us? I can say for myself that it is, you know, even on the failures, the experiences that I produced were, were good enough. Even if I didn't hit the goal, those were adequate enough to make me still excited to continue to do it, right? So,
Right.
and try to look for new avenues and new ways to do it, or better ways to refine it. I mean, that's this whole thing for me, is like, you know, here's how I did it over 40 something years. Uh, you know, can I go through that again with a fine-tooth comb, which I maybe didn't do the first time because I wasn't thinking of how can I how can I represent this to another human? It's just for me, it didn't really matter that much. And so, can I go through my past experiences and what I did, kind of in a step-by-step way? Can I refine it and make it, more concise so that it will cut somebody else's learning curve down, so that they'll have the ability to maybe go even farther beyond that and produce an effect that's, that shows us all, oh, you know this is really, how we're going to, this is a way that we can really maximize what we're doing to produce the effect we want, right? So I don't know. It's
Yeah. So, but and to the point that you're making, like, but these are still like the principles that you use when you're applying yourself to all of these experiments that help to enlighten you to some degree.
right, right,
Like,
right. And, and part of it is asking these hard questions, right? Like taking the other
yeah.
side of the board and saying, well, what about this, you idiot? What about this? And oh, that doesn't make any sense. Like, really being, I mean, in reality, the devil's advocate is actually a high level theologian. He's not an atheist.
Right.
So they have, a very, very strong working internal knowledge and belief of their faith. So because they have that, they can be very pointed with their questions about,
Right.
like poking
S-
at it from
s-
that side.
So do you so do you have a place that you want to start? I feel like I should like
The first one.
read them off.
I love them all. So I think,
I'm just gonna read everything I wrote.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah,
so
yeah.
okay, and then we'll start at the top. All right. So the external is a perfect mirror of the internal. So this is my devil's advocate position, and these are the questions that arise. And it's just a series of bullet notes, sort of. What do you mean by internal? Is that just thoughts and emotions, or is that something deeper, like my subconscious? If what you mean by internal is the subconscious, that is a complete and utter mystery to me, both in content and structure. So if that is what you're saying, how is it helpful, and what is the first step? This is a statement of cause and effect. You are saying that my internal is the cause and my external is the effect. But effects are produced by actions. Are you saying effects are produced by thoughts? Again, this points to what you mean by internal. This part of the equation is not clear. Next, how can I even begin to prove this in a precise way? What experiment do you recommend to prove that this is the case, that could isolate the variables enough to prove it out, or even begin to supply evidence? Um, Next, this makes me think of three quotes and statements, and I wonder if they are the same statement in a different form. Bashar, consciousness is not in physical reality. Physical reality is in consciousness. Sadhguru, all human experience is generated from within. Do you know anything except how it appears inside you? Bashar, this is his third of the four principles of creation. What you put out is what you get back. Next, these quotes point at what you are saying when you say the external is a perfect mirror of the internal, but each in their own way. The first two seem to refer to the structure of reality as being internal exclusively or primarily, and the last one refers more to causality, which is what I think your statement is pointing to. The question being, if any of this is true, again, how do I prove it? And furthermore, how do I precisely identify and bring into clear conscious awareness the aspect of my internal that is supposed to cause all that I perceive? Next, because the internal part is so unclear to me as this proposed new cause of everything I experience, it feels just as chaotic, if not more so, than my simple Newtonian understanding of physical cause, physical effect. What you are proposing is, quote, invisible, immaterial cause, physical effect. How do I even begin doing anything with that? Furthermore, how do you expose someone to this idea in a way that doesn't cause even more chaos and more concern than what they were dealing with before? Right. So that's my whole list. so, so
And it is an excellent list, I must say. I was very happy to read it.
all right. So,
This should
I
be
want
done.
answers.
This should be done late night with cigars and cognac. Let me tell you right now, and
I
there
know.
we, and we would be watching the sunrise in the morning and probably on step two.
Yeah. I know. I was kind of thinking that. I'm like, man, I don't know how we're gonna get through all this in one, session
Well, I
here.
think
It's
one
probably gonna be more than one.
and one will bleed into the next. It's like
Yeah,
some of the things that we come, that if we get to some resolution on them, then they will, you'll see that it sort of starts to weave together and filter down, and um, other questions that you have there will be explained by things that we discussed in the beginning, or sort of
right,
bad back and forth.
right, right. All right, so let's start at the top.
Yeah.
What do you mean by internal, right? Is that just thoughts and emotions, or do you mean something deeper like my subconscious?
Yeah, I
As
mean,
internal, like what's your definition for internal? Because we all know what we mean by external. We mean external environment, right? But to me, that also, like, if I wanted to make a really clear definition of external, I'd say like my life and all that I experience, but also like to make it even more clear to me, external is like all the information that comes in through my five physical senses, right? Everything from my situations to my relationships to my finances to my health and my body and how I experience my physical body to like just like everything that's coming in moment to moment through my five physical senses like is my external. My
right.
internal is like the invisible part, right? So I think is that like my thoughts and my feelings and the more subtle dimensions of things that I perceive in my own mind. And then it's like if it's that, that's one thing, but if it's subconscious, then it's like, well, subconscious is something that's deeper and invisible, and something like I either only experience in my dreams, or that comes to me as like subtle impressions through like intuition, or turn left instead of turn right, or you know what I mean, like whatever. It's like more
Yeah.
of that kind of. And when I say, like, if you're talking about subconscious being a mystery, it's like um both in structure and content, because like the content part of your subconscious we get glimpses of through our meditations or our dreams and things like that, but the structure of it is also like amorphous. Like the structure of physical reality and how I perceive reality through my senses is pretty clear to me, right? But like the structure of how my subconscious works and how it communicates with me and what that landscape is like, I mean, that's something that I feel like more than anybody else that I personally know, you've explored through lucid dreaming. So I feel like you might have a better handle on the structure of the landscape of the subconscious itself. But what we're talking about is simply like, how does somebody without that level of direct experience start to apply this principle, or like how do you even begin to bring your attention to the aspect of your internal that you're saying is so causative of everything that I experience externally?
Mm-hmm. Go.
Go.
I mean, I think you sort of encompassed it pretty well. I mean, external is everything that we can perceive through our external senses, right? So, all five of the senses. And that's why, like, the sixth sense or intuition, or whatever you want to call that, is both very subtle aspects of things that we perceive with our five senses, blended with, you know, past experience, both personally and, maybe from a collective part of our subconscious. So it's blended together and produces this a feeling, if you want, or a sense, if you want, that tells us, we should turn left or turn right, for no reason that's apparent to us from our physical, senses. And when we do, we're either proven right or wrong, right? We either get to the destination or we don't, right? And we go, oh, well, I guess I made a wrong choice, or whatever it is. We sort of blow it off, right? And
So that's
so
intuition, but that would be kind of separate from what you mean by internal as a causative
yeah, I think
agent
that's
of
a
your
blending
experience.
of all of those things together. Very subtle perceptions of senses that we don't usually. It's not usually in our
Oh,
range
I
of
see.
of
Yeah.
instantaneous perception. From sense. We know that our eyes see a much broader spectrum than what we normally would see. We just don't.
Right.
Brain doesn't register it, right? Because it can't. We would just be in a white field if the brain registered every spectrum of light that we could perceive through our eyes, right? So it has to filter some things out, or the majority of things out. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to maneuver visually through our landscape, our environment, right? So, and the same goes with everything, really. Audible, all the senses, right? So, but that also shows, the differences in ranges of sensory perception for a lot of people. I mean, like, not everybody except a sommelier, eh, eh, gets their nose insured for $1 million, right? Because they've either had some specific, they were born enhanced like that, or they've trained it to be, so subtle that they pick up all of these really rarefied notes that other people don't perceive, initially. They have to,
Right.
so,
So
so,
intuition is more a matter of sensitivity.
right, right. And I think that goes with any of the senses, to be honest with you.
Right.
A chef that utilizes taste in a different way than we can all enjoy what they produce, but they have these very subtle little things that they experience that makes the whole much better, right?
Right.
Same thing
So
with
how do you define the internal
I think the
aspect that is the causative agent of the external that we
mhm.
perceive?
I think it's the subconscious primarily, but it's, that's what we're trying to access, but we can only access it by aligning it with the conscious mind, or having the conscious mind align with the subconscious. So, and that encompasses, how we feel about things, emotionally and as well, right? The emotion is just that, energy in motion, right? It's that visceral response to things that we feel,
So, um,
or
okay.
things that we think about, not even feel. It's not I mean, we interpret it as a physical feeling, right? But it's from things that we're mentally witnessing, right? It's like that person that you have that contact with. It's not like you know, it's not like they're reaching out and tickling your midsection, it's you see them and you get that butterflies in your stomach or whatever it is, right? It feels like a physical sensation, right? But we know that it's just an emotion that's kind of, you know, um, unfolding, right? And sort of coming out. But nobody could say like, oh, that's just an odd thing. It actually feels like it's a physical thing, right? But there's nothing that nobody's stimulating you physically to do that, right? It's like that's just a response to a mental construct that you have of, let's say, that other person or of a pet or whatever it is, right? So, or a situation, right?
Yeah. So that has to do with your definition of like an emotion.
Yep. And so the internal for me is, when it's a combination of the conscious mind that you're thinking with all the time and processing your world, whatever that is, and your subconscious, which is sort of the background, which has recorded every experience you've ever had. And, if we believe the hermeticists, every experience that you could have, and the collective unconscious, which is the experience of everybody that's ever been. And if we believe them, everybody that ever will be, right? So all experience in a vast field, um, that we're trying to, align ourselves with at one point or another. And the alignment factor is our conscious mind. But there's the hitch, right? It's like, how do you align your conscious mind, with that? If that's really what causes the channels to align and let that information flow through and occupy a space of belief rather than a space of, uh, uh, you know, um, wishful thinking.
That's a great point because if what you mean by internal is only your conscious mind and your conscious thoughts about things, that can absolutely fall into those two categories and probably more of act genuine belief that you hold to be true or wishful thinking, um or just random thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
um but really you could say like there are so many things that go through my conscious mind all day long. I mean, that was part of my argumentation, or part of my devil's advocate thing was like, if what you mean by internal is just my conscious thoughts, how, like, then I'm really screwed.
All of us,
you
right? I mean,
know
that's the whole idea behind the monkey mind from a Buddhist perspective, right? It's like those bazillion random thoughts moving all the time, every second of the day.
So basically what you mean by internal isn't, or external is a perfect mirror of the internal. What you actually mean is the external is a perfect reflection of your beliefs. And a
Which are
book and
usually and then we have to explain what beliefs are from our standpoint.
Well, what is okay? Let's do that. Let's try that.
Belief is the not blind faith, which is different than belief, right? A lot of times people, at least in our culture, use those synonymously, and they're not, right? Blind faith is faith in something that you have no experience of, or no, you know, no practical explanation of, so um, there's you have nothing to hang that on. It's literally like, you know, belief in, faith in that something will happen with no previous or other people's previous experience of that happening. But belief, what we believe, our belief comes from consistent results of the same cause and effect. It's like we could say,
But that doesn't make sense. That's circular. Because if you're saying like the external is a perfect reflection of your beliefs, but beliefs only come from like consistent results, then like if that was kind of like the case, then you would say like, well, then I could only ever experience things that I've only ever experienced. Like what's the thing that like or maybe it's not circular, but it at least brings the question like, okay, well, if beliefs only come from consistent results, like how do I change a belief?
right.
And what belief is am I supposed to have a different belief, or is a belief something that I choose to be true, or are beliefs that are absolutely true, are they only representative of like some kind of archetypal absolute truths that exist in creation that I am seeking to perceive more clearly and align myself with? Like I'm trying to believe the truth by perceiving the truth, or are beliefs something that are more flexible and subjective to the person? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah. Hmm.
Do you have an
Yes.
answer for that?
Yes to all of the above.
I'm putting you on the spot, man.
No, but that's what that's why I like this so much, is because we have to go back and forth, so it literally becomes this sort of, in a way, a lawyer's duel, right? You're trying to prove, you know, to yourself or to the court that, you know, you have a not just a premise, not just a, like an end result that you're trying to achieve, but the methodology to get there,
Yeah,
right?
because at the end of the day, like all we're ever really trying to do is just produce a life that is more representative of like the experience that we want, whether that's like internal or external, right?
True.
It's like literally, so all I'm seeking to do in like thinking about these principles or contemplating them or clarifying them is to make my actions on a daily basis, or the focus of my attention on a daily basis, more clear and conducive to producing what I want. Right. Right. So
Exactly.
it's like I'm trying to like do less things that don't work and do more things that do
That
work.
do. That's right.
Right.
That's
So
right.
if somebody says to me like, well, all the results that you experience in your life are basically based on your beliefs or what you hold to be true internally, then the next question is like, well, it's literally just like, oh, well, then show, how do I, you know,
How do I
align
flip
my
that narrative?
actions and my beliefs so that I get what I want? you know,
Right.
it's like,
Right. And, again, I mean, even if you were taking the most basic, physical cause and effect, right? You'd have to at least, you'd start with the thought that that's actually possible before you would even try to experiment with it, right? Even if it's purely physical, you
Mm-hmm.
know, if I hit this ball with a stick, will the ball fly over the fence?
Mm-hmm.
It's like I've seen other people do it, but that doesn't mean I can do it. But I'm getting closer to thinking that I might be able to do it because I can swing, I can pick up a stick, I can swing a stick. I know that it's hard and I know that the ball is solid. So if I hit it just right, will it fly over the fence? Well, the only way I'm really going to have that experience is if I pick up the stick and try to do it. And, I might miss the fence, from missing the ball completely to, not having enough strength to, or hitting it correctly to, get it over the fence and everything in between, right? There may be 99 times where that happens before I get the 100th time of practicing that in order to produce the effect of it getting over the fence, right? And so then it becomes, and if I can do that more than one time and not, because there's always the idea that if you do it one time, it's a fluke, right? It's actually a mistake. And so, you have to produce it for yourself a number of times, and that'll be different for everyone in order to produce a belief that you can hit the home run or whatever you want to call it, hit the ball over the fence, right? So your belief only comes from consistent, cause and effect results, so otherwise you're scratching your head and, it's just a fluke or whatever, right? So, um, or even if you believe you can, but you've never done it, it's a false belief, right? Because you've never actually done it. I mean, we've all had those experiences too, right? Oh, I think I can do that. And you try it and wow, it turns out to be a lot more difficult than it was. And I'm a moron. I can't get this to happen. I can't get the ball in the cup or whatever it is. It's like, holy crap. So, it becomes, the belief in the other thing. And then you keep perpetuating that by, and even if you achieve it one time, you think it's a fluke, it's a mistake in reverse, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, because you've missed it 500 times, if you ever get it once, you're just going to think that that was a mistake. It was just luck. You put it on something else, right? But your real belief is that you can't do that.
Okay, so well, let's go down that road then. Like, because I could ask more about like how do you define like, or how do you do you try to identify what you are holding to be true or what you are believing right now that's producing the effects that you have, or do you simply just try to set up experiments to prove out a different belief? Like what's base essentially the question then is like, well, okay, like what does the process look like then for experimenting with the idea that the external is a perfect mirror of your internal, which internal now we're defining as like your beliefs. Like how do you go about that? Like what do you start with? You start with what do you want?
Yeah.
But then like but what do you want is a target, right? And
Hmm.
why do you want it as through that particular writing exercise, which is one of the foundational practices, right? Like that would be more of a process of like uncover like identifying a target and then uncovering your deeper motivational
Origin,
origin behind that thing
that
to
desire. Why do you
make
want
yourself more congruent
it?
with it, right? Or make yourself more clearly aligned with it, let's say, right? But that doesn't really like begin to address belief or process of experimentation. So
No.
what does that part look like?
Okay, so, again, it's hard not to fall back on these, some of the other ideas, but,
Yeah, it's okay.
but we
That's
can
okay.
talk about it because
That's
it's
okay
just you
because
and I,
they're
right? And so,
and because like ultimately I am a, I know that the principles don't exist in isolation. They are kind of a network of ideas. So like
yes.
that's fine.
And well, because it will be less stilting, less
Yeah.
tilted if we already agree on the foundational principles, at least in theory.
Right.
So, and the basic premise of what we do, so we can speak, kind of common language
Yes.
to do that, so that, that we can really tease out, where are the bumps in the road here,
Yes. Yes.
and make it more clarifying, right?
Yes.
So, okay, so what do I want? I have this idea. Okay, I want to, have more access to my subconscious, so how can I do that? Well, I would have to, either A, give my conscious mind more, make some room in my conscious mind, which, there are lots of traditions that do that, right? Again, through meditation and different practices, to give yourself that, you know, what the Chinese would call, Chuan meditation, which is no mind, right? No thoughts. And and I'm sure that the Buddhists have a similar thing, where it's like, and I'm sure the Hindus have a similar thing where it's like you occupy a space of no random thoughts, no thoughts, right? It's this clear space, uh, which sounds almost impossible to most people, and it is very difficult. It is extremely difficult. You have to really apply yourself for a long period of time to achieve even a minimal amount of that. But once you do, and you know that it's possible, you can expand on that. Or, you know, you can try to achieve getting into, a lucid state of dreaming, right? So the dreaming, when you dream, you're in your subconscious. Even a regular dream, you're in your subconscious, which should already give people a clue that their subconscious is a little scattered and, chaotic, right? So, and it's not that that landscape is chaotic, it's that, the small amount of your conscious mind that you bring to the situation, because even in a regular dream, you're experiencing it like it's reality, right? For the most part. I mean, there's no question that it's you that's experiencing this, right? So, how you deal in that chaotic place and the chaos that's going on, or the harmony that's going on there, gives you a clear indication of how, your conscious mind and subconscious mind are aligned, right? The more chaotic, the less aligned they are. The more harmonious, the more even linear in structure, the more, you know, uh, the more harmonious they are. Excuse me. So if we take that as a basic premise, then when I'm lucid dreaming, it again, defining that, it means that I have my waking conscious mind in my dream, and I know that I'm dreaming. Right? It's very clear. It's nothing ambiguous there. It's not a vivid dream. It's not a whatever dream. It's not even a semi-lucid dream, made up term. All right, I'm just adopting it because, where you have the clarity of mind there, but you don't know you're dreaming. So it just feels like you're in a, completely different reality, but it's as
Right.
physical as this. And you have your normal conscious waking mind, all the aspects of your thinking are intact, but you don't know you're in a dream. That's what I would consider a semi-lucid dream. You know, it's just a bad term, but there's nothing better I've come up with at this point. So, um, but in a lucid dream, even when you first get in there, right, it's usually pretty like, although you're dreaming by definition, you don't have that much control, right? It's like, or it's haphazard at best. You might find yourself flying, you might find yourself this and that. If you're a personality that can just be like, adaptive and just kind of go with the flow and fun loving and whatever, you're probably going to have a really great time and just go through it. And, you know, you're not going to get 2 miles off the earth and then fall because you just had the thought of what if I fall? Right. So it's like, you're just kind of in it for the whatever, right? And it's a dream and you're just having fun and you're just trying all kinds of crazy stuff to see what will happen. And so, but in some ways that's still, you know, a bit chaotic, but maybe a little less so, right? You're probably that person is probably the same person that in physical reality, they find themselves in situations and they're able to maneuver through it pretty smoothly. Like it doesn't really ruffle them that much. They take action in accordance with what's going on, and they usually produce a decent end result, right? If you have a dream where everything's just happening to you and you're overwhelmed and all kinds of crazy stuff is going on and you can't keep track of it and it just nothing ever makes sense and you're confused and you're getting closed in and all of that, you're probably like that on the outside too, where it's just like everything has that element of chaos to it and you're out of control and you're a victim and everything's being done to you and there's nothing, no matter how hard you struggle, you're just getting you know mired down even more in the bog, right? So this sort of denotes that idea of you know if your internal is like that, and that's where your conscious mind and your subconscious mind are aligned, right? Is in that chaotic kind of thing where it's like whatever your subconscious is trying to send you with advice or like, remember when this experience happened, and you did this and that turned out badly, don't do that. Only a small percentage of that is getting through. And so it just sort of adds to the chaos in your mind, your conscious mind, when you're getting through your day or maneuvering through a circumstance, right? So so one of the ways that we can sort of experiments that we can do to work that out is, to consistently try to produce that lucid dreaming effect. Don't make it random. Make it, even if you can get, a few times a month to get in there, and sort of learn how to control the situation from there, right? Where everything is possible and nothing is impossible. And you can, maneuver through that, be able to mobile around in there, go where you want, no obstructions. You solve all the puzzles, you do this, you do that, right? You can see, you can have experience different environments. You meander or move through it in a very conscious way, with little resistance, right? Or even if you get resistance, you overcome the resistance quite easily. So, and then things start to open up for you. You have different experiences because after a while, just the random stuff becomes a little blasé, at least for some of us. So, um,
I
and
guess the question is like, what is the relationship between what I experience in my dreams, let's say the content of my subconscious, and my beliefs? And how do those, like, where are the beliefs in my subconscious? How do they express themselves? Like there, like, because another thing that came to mind when you were talking is something that, Bashar also says, that which I like, or which resonates with what you talk about, which is like, um, this, uh, the subconscious or dreaming is like the template for your physical reality, right? So the idea is like, if you put more, an increasing amount of attention in your dreaming, and make it more lucid and clear, and you can learn to change things there, understand things there, perceive, like, if that is representative of a kind of energetic blueprint for my physical
yeah,
reality, then
right.
ostensibly I could be in my subconscious. I could do things differently there, or change things there, or relate to things there, or do something there that would somehow change the blueprint, and then my life would be different physically. It would, manifest itself differently. So, but I don't really, but those are very, even though it's like a good, I think, like, analogy, it still is extremely abstract to someone that has like a limited degree of experiential knowledge, actually acting that out, right? But I do think that having this conversation around it is helpful, at least for me, because, like, when I think one of the aspects for myself that makes lucid dreaming, or dipping my toes into these waters, right, feel a little bit chaotic or uncertain or unnerving, or like that whole like fear of the unknown aspect, is that, like, I don't really have a clear idea of like, well, like, am I gonna, get in my dream and just like screw something up there, do something wrong there, and then like mess up my physical life somehow if I'm like dealing with the blueprint on that level,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
like when I get in, like, how do I interpret these things, or how, you know what I mean? Like
The
it's all
symbols or
so
whatever, right?
abstract, especially when it comes to the idea of like, you know, um, belief. Like it all just becomes this like soup of concepts that doesn't really give me a clearer picture of how do I make my life the way that I would prefer it to be
Correct.
using this approach.
Yeah. So again, like in the beginning, I said consistent results, right? So it's
Yeah.
like that means multiple, repetitions of the same thing, the same. I do this and this happens. I do this and this happens. I jump in the pool, I get wet. I jump in the pool, I get wet. So, it becomes a belief after a while. Like if I said you're going to jump in the pool and stay dry, and you get out and you're dry, you'd be like, that kind of paradigm shift would break your mind for most people. It's like even when you see these street magicians, kind of blow people's minds, and they're like, there are certain people that are just like, they're you can tell they've had a mental fracture there for a second, right? There's some people that are like, I like the guys that are just like, yeah, and they're like, I don't believe, like that. That's okay. That's a pressure release valve that takes the pressure off your mind. Those people that go into a stupor after that, they're they're they've been a little bit, they've gotten a psychic bruise there, that is going to take them a little time to work their way out of it. You get a bad enough psychic bruise like that, and it can be a permanent blemish, so it can literally break people. I mean, that's all the warnings of, people not showing, in traditions and esoteric, communities. Like that's why, they don't always show, younger students, proof of this by doing it, because, for some of them, it would literally break them, right? It's like, you've learned this your whole life. You have that belief that you
That things
jump in the
are the
pool.
way that you've been told they are. And
And
then
and
someone
and
does something
every
that's
experience
completely
you've
outside
had
that.
has compounded that and made that real for you. That is a belief. That's reality for you. And when somebody, defies that, whether by trickery or by actual doing it, right? It's like that can literally, break your mind. In fact, one of the ways that we protect ourselves from that is by, having your mind go, I don't believe that. you know it's a simple statement, but it's very profound on your mind. I don't believe that. That's a trick. That's a whatever. You have to explain it away so that your mind will realign with what it knows, what it thinks to be absolute truth.
Well, I guess the question then just becomes like, why would anybody go about trying to change their life this way as opposed to by traditional means if it involves such kind of like challenge and risk?
Yeah, because for one thing, it's like you probably have wants that exceed your physical capacity to have. If you want to be rich by being the best salesman ever, but you suck at talking to people, and you're inhibited by talking to people, and you're embarrassed by all these things, and you don't want to make the phone calls, and you don't want to do these things, that that's a limit that you may not be able to get by. You may spend 20 years with psychologists and trainers and mentors and whatever getting you out of that mode, but your internal structure is probably always going to have that inhibition of talking to people cold, right? If you're an introvert, you're not going to have a very good time at being a salesperson, right? It's anathema to you. It's right. It's like you just, like the two things don't align at all.
So what's the alternative? How
The
is this an
alternative is
alternative to
that,
that?
where are you, less, let's not say not limited, but less limited, in your internal structure, your mind, right? You can condition your mind slowly and surely to, um, you know, uh, do meditation, figure out, go through experiments of relaxation to bring yourself into more of a profound relaxation. You can train yourself to lucid dream. You can train yourself to even make your dreams more coherent or harmonious, right?
But
It's like
but
all
like
of these things are available to you at only the cost is your time and your energy devoted to those things, but it doesn't have anything to do with physical reality.
right, but the question is like if you are saying, okay, here's this person, they're an introvert, like an extreme introvert, and it would take them 20 to 30 years of training to whether it was psychological or technical or whatever to become the level of salesman that they would need to be to become wealthy at the level that they want to be. How would this process differ in that it would what would the solution look like? Would it be that they make the 20 or 30-year process of becoming that level of salesman to acquire that kind of wealth just quicker? Or would it provide them a completely alternative path? Like, is that what you're saying? The process is going to be the process and the resolution of getting to that end result is going to be completely different and in a realm that's unknown to you at this point, like by
I think that's
changing
your
your
choice,
beliefs?
but I think, again, you want to take the path of least resistance, right? It's like it's a hell of a lot, easier to use your natural inclinations to achieve your goals than it is to try to teach yourself something that's completely opposite to your nature to achieve your goals, your end result.
Right. I think the idea, at least on some level, or would be like the way that who I am, let's say my authentic self, right? Or like my what is most natural to me or authentic to me
Mm-hmm.
is completely worthy of the experiences that are relevant for me that I want to have.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that I don't have to like learn anything new or do anything
Correct.
differently or like what or resolve some type of like internal conflicts or like
Of course.
whatever, right?
Of course. But, an introvert will have a much easier time, right? Because they'll be less intrigued with outside distractions, right?
Mhm.
So they'll actually, on these internal paths, let's call them, they're probably going to have a little bit easier time because they're very comfortable being
Oh, I
alone.
see.
They're very
I see.
comfortable doing
Oh, I
things
see.
by themselves. They're very comfortable, reading and internalizing things and sort of applying themselves, not in a collective forum, right?
Mhm.
So in that case, they're probably going to achieve their end up goal even quicker than if they say, oh, the only way I can get this is by being the ultimate salesman. And that's going to take me no matter what I do. I mean, that's like a whole psychological switch for me. Like I have to totally go against my nature to do that. And
Right.
and even if I learn to act it out, it's still not authentic. And because it's not authentic, it's not really aligned with my belief.
Right.
You know, my belief is I don't really enjoy being around a lot of people. I'm uncomfortable around them. I'm much more comfortable being alone or with a few close allies or whatever it is, right? And that's my comfort zone. And I don't really desire to be with people that I don't know or in large groups or whatever, or God forbid, speaking in a huge group or something like that, right? And so it's kind of one of those things where, I mean, it doesn't mean that an extrovert or somebody who is very aligned with that sales kind of mythos, would, um, couldn't use these techniques to enhance themselves even more, to be in a better place and to see themselves in that epitome of top salesman of the world kind of thing, or whatever it is, right? you know I sell private jets for a living. It's like every commission is millions of dollars. It's like it's those types of they could align themselves with that you know reality. So using these same techniques, right? So um and that will be attainable much quicker for them, because it's all about that alignment of the the all that is the subconscious, all experience and all expression of that experience, um, uh, aligned with your, you know, um, your conscious mind being in complete alignment with that. And through the expression of that, producing that end result in the physical reality as well. Right. Well, let's look at it from probably just a purely physical standpoint too, right? Like, a lot of these, let's take the real estate thing because it's a very concrete example, right? Like, um, you've got these real estate moguls, right? That sell these programs and teach people how to do this stuff. And it's literally a point by point, like, you know, find these properties, make these calls, get funding this way, manipulate the funding to produce the down payment to then flip whatever. Like, it's
Right.
a step by step
Yes.
thing that's like, it's a very
R-
concrete like process of doing
Right.
that, you
Right.
know. And yet on all of their thing, if that were absolute, like everybody that took that course and followed the point by point plan would be at the same level that these people are at. And yet we know that less than 10% of them actually achieve even half of what these people have done. What's the difference?
Well, you could easily say that there are many factors that contribute to the difference, including, their the time that they invest, um,
But let's say
the
all those things are equal.
well, no,
Because
they're
I've seen
never
people that like they're more beautiful people, they're
right.
very articulate, they dress better, they have all of the outward appearance of the successful whatever, right? And yet they still don't achieve the level of success that these people do. So what is the difference? It's their internal structure that's not aligned the way that that other person is aligned. The other thing that they often tout is that if they lost everything, they'd be able to reproduce it within a very short period of time.
And some of those guys do that as an experiment, like for
That's right.
fun on their channels or whatever,
That's
to
right. They do
show
that.
people how they can do that with nothing or whatever.
That's right. And they do it. And why is that? Because they're in
It's their
complete
belief.
align. It's their belief that they can do it because they're in complete alignment with something that's already occurred.
But and so that's the case. That's the thing, right? It's like, so there are two aspects again that are not okay. There's two aspects to what you just said that come to mind for me, right? Um, One is like, uh man, I lost it. It's
it
so
gets
hard.
it gets
It's
squirrely,
so it's so hard to hold all the ideas and be pointed about them. But okay, so let's just say though that, like, you were saying, if someone gives a real estate program, right, and they're providing like a very concrete step-by-step process, like, you're going to flip houses or buy and sell real estate or whatever, and just follow this outline. This is my methodology for you to produce that result. It's very like technical, and okay, maybe it will work for some people and it won't work for others, right? Depending on their internal structure. But in some ways, I feel like what I aspire to produce here with you is something, even if the system doesn't work exactly for each person, it has the same quality of technical clarity so that people can be like, oh, okay, like even if I have to use different techniques or whatever, I still understand this on a principle level enough that I can find my own way through it, right? To adjust my internal or my belief to change and, to get the thing that I want, right?
Right. Or at least to be open to the experimenting to disprove it. Not that you're
Sure.
trying to disprove it, but you're trying to, utilize as many ways to get to the end result internally or align yourself with that to prove the point. And if it
Right.
doesn't happen, then you've disproved the point, right? So,
Right.
but you're willing to give it your all to try to do that and
Okay.
see what end result, you glean along the way.
Right. So
Right.
the other thing that I was going to say is that the the challenging aspect of this or learning or doing anything new ever is that anything that you identify that you want, and let's say the more that you want it or the more that you prize it or the more that you aspire to it, means like usually that means you perceive it to be like the more you want it and the more desirable it seems, probably means that you perceive it to be more difficult in its attainment or further away from you in your experience. Like it becomes more desirable because that distance seems greater, right? And so if that's the case, then almost everything that you could aim at or want to do or experience or achieve or whatever is like the more great it seems to you and the more you desire it, it's almost like the more out of alignment with your belief system it appears to be to you, and it may be to you on some level, because for the master real estate mogul guy who can just like have $0 in his bank account with literally nothing and just go on the street and hold up a sign and do whatever he needs to do to be like a multimillionaire in like a month and can do that, like he's got the belief system, but he also has like it's a belief system of thoughts, words, and deeds. Like internally, I'm in alignment with what I'm doing. I know what I need to do. I'm comfortable with what I need to do. I can act that out. I have no problem with it. When I do this thing, I get this result. End of story. It's not a big deal, right? But like
Correct.
everything that we want that's outside of what we have, we don't have any, or at least some of all of the building blocks that produce like a, an alignment of beliefs with my thoughts, words, and deeds. So, and if we're saying, okay, your external is a perfect mirror of your internal, which is to say your external is a reflection of your beliefs, I guess the main question again just comes back to how like how do I engage that as a process? Like 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 from a technical standpoint, like where do I even start to begin to make that an experience of some relevance or substance to me that I can utilize it to actually change my life consistently?
Sure. Sure. You know, I think one of the things, I mean, a lot of people come to this work and they're already in an overwhelmed state, right? So the first thing you need to do is create some space for yourself, right? You have to at least hold the premise that um that being, even if you had some level of peace in your life, it would give you a bit of a break so that at least you could endure the other thing a little bit better, right? The overwhelm, that maybe if you, the idea is that if I can give myself even some internal peace, no matter how little, that will buoy me up to be able to withstand the overwhelm a little better. It might be able to clear a little path. I might be able to see a pinpoint of light at the end of this dark tunnel, right? That's all. We're just looking for like literally the pinpoint of light in the darkness. And so, you know, and again, how would I go about it? How did I go about it? It's like, it was never like just putting all my attention on one thing. It was, like a combination of knowing that, uh, and I didn't, not say even knowing, I, I, somebody told me, and I took them at their word that, uh, uh, that that overwhelm, that sense of internal kind of like, like you're not actually physically being crushed, but it feels like the world is crushing down on you with all these things you have to do and you can't do them. That's a very kind of horrible place to be in, right? And so, that by that it causes your energy in your body to be impeded and slow down, and so you can't think as clearly. So every little thing is the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? You shut down more and more. And so how do you go about that? Well, for somebody like that, it's maybe that, that even the idea of meditation is so outlandish that, you just can't even think about giving that any amount of time rather than just physically sleeping to maybe be ready for the next day or whatever it is, right? So you might just start out with, you know consciously trying to relax your physical body, which we know, the physical body, has some input on that impedance, right? The more relaxed you are, the more the energy flows freely, right? And we know this from all kinds of examples, from everything from combat, martial arts, those types of things. They'll always say, relax, it's like, and then you'll be able to be tense when you need to be tense. It's like if you're tense all the time, you won't have enough strength to be tense when you do need it, right? And it makes you slower. It makes you, prone to not react quick enough to things that happen. And so, you might start with just that physical, conscious physical relaxation, right? That, any of the techniques to consciously relax every aspect of your body, and give yourself, even if you need, give yourself a time limit, say you're going to do this every day, for 30 minutes or 20 minutes, if you can, you're probably not going to get through it all in that. You might even fall asleep while you're doing it. Try sitting up, try lying down, try different positions, right? And there are lots of different conscious relaxation techniques, right? So you might, I think, using a bunch of different ones actually gets to the heart of it in a quicker way than just using one and repeating it over and over and over again, right? So, um, but just doing that first, and see if at the end of 30 days of doing that, or 42 days of doing that, that, you don't feel as overwhelmed. You may even feel that you're able to respond to things. Some things may have already resolved at that point, right? And can you could you could chalk it up to luck if you want, or whatever, but basically, the correlation is that, from the time that you started consciously relaxing your physical body, nothing more than that, no real esoteric stuff, right? Just literally consciously relaxing every aspect of your physical body, that your mind also started to relax, because that free flow of energy was moving through there, and, clearing out the doldrums, and, trying to make a little bit more space. You at the end of that 30 days, you may have established that pinprick of light at the end of that dark tunnel, right? And so, and the exterior component of that would be that you move through your day with a little bit more ease. You don't feel as overwhelmed, right? You don't, some things start to resolve, no matter how small. It's just you're looking for any breath of air, right? Of free air while you're doing that. That's your only goal. And you're directly correlating that to that, conscious physical relaxation. I would start with that. If I had to pick one thing that would be the easiest thing without having to have all this other knowledge, or, you know, jumping through all these hoops to get some effect, right? It's like literally just doing that to see if that doesn't produce, sometimes again, like you said in the beginning, like, you know, the relief may come from something seemingly from left field, right? Like it's not going to come in the way that you think, right? You're just doing the experiment to see what the end result will be. But you do have this idea, at least in a very broad sense, the end result that you want, right? It may not be king of the world, right? Yeah, it may just be, I just need to not be overwhelmed all the goddamn time, right? So it's like, let's see, if just doing, if I need a place to start to prove that I'm not wasting my time, let me try this very simple experiment and see what the end result will be at the end. It may come much sooner than that. You may feel, much more relief, but give it a certain amount of time, 30, 42 days, whatever, and just see if what is it in the beginning and what is it at the end. Be brutally honest with yourself. It's like, here is my situation. This is how I feel about all of these things and the things that are crushing me down. I'm going to do this physical relaxation for 42 days. And at the end of that 40 days, I'm going to evaluate all these things again. Has any of them resolved? Or even if they haven't resolved, do I feel more at ease with them? Is it not crushing me, in the way that it was prior? That's a clear, experimentation to see if you can produce an end result that's completely mental in that,
But how does that, and how does that address things on that level of belief?
well, the belief is that, part of that overwhelm is from you, being so contracted all the time from all of these onslaughts, right? You're just covering up. You're just in a completely defensive mode, right? And even if you're lashing out, it's like that's just making it worse, right? Because you're just opening yourself up more. If I completely relax, at least for that period of time, does that give space, for me to not be in that scenario? Do I feel physically more at ease than I did before? Do I feel mentally less overwhelmed than I did before? You haven't changed anything else. You're still doing in your day-to-day existence, right? Maybe as much as you have been. Maybe you feel like you have enough energy, you can do a little bit more and pull yourself out of that. But it all started from, you know, relaxation, as we would say, relaxation is power, right? So it's like, this is, the people that are overwhelmed feel powerless. And so, things just kind of crush on you and add up and add up. And the more you struggle, the more you go down in the quicksand, right? You get smothered. So, until you give up. All right. So the other way is, relax and let things, wherever you are at this point, if at least, it may buoy you up a little bit, right? So you have less struggle. You're able to, uh, sort of, you'll see some light at the end of the tunnel that you can get to and be, the whole idea is that you want to relieve that overwhelmed sensation. If you can do that and you get to that point where you are a little bit or greatly, not feeling overwhelmed, that increased energy flow is going to actually produce more thoughts conducive to removing you from that situation permanently, right? You're going to be able to think more clearly. If everybody's physically poking you with a sharp stick on a regular basis, and you know uh and even your lashing out doesn't do anything, right? And they just keep poking you, pretty soon you're just going to kind of curl up in a ball and endure the poking for as long as you can until you expire, right? So The crying and whimpering isn't going to help. The lashing out doesn't help. The everything you've tried physically doesn't help. So, we know, even from psychological studies, children that are abused, a lot of times they go internal, right? And it gives them a sense of relief to some degree. The external is so horrible that they go completely internal, right? They get refuge there. So, um, not a good example, but pretty horrific example, but that's what it is for. I think that's the case for a lot of people, right? And so, and they convince themselves to some degree or another that nothing can help them, so my thing is, what's the simplest thing that you could do to produce an effect that would be conducive to not being in that state, at least reduce that state? If you're not doing anything differently except that, you have to you have to kind of make that correlation between, here's a cause that here's a cause that I did, and here was the effect that that turned out to be better for me in the end. So now if I apply myself to that same thing and maybe add a little more to it, maybe I can actually get to the entrance of that dark tunnel. Maybe I can come out into the light, and then from there, well, maybe I'll actually have the idea of you know when you're overwhelmed, it's almost even more defeatist to think that there could be something grand at the end. You're just looking to survive at that point. You want to go from survival mode to living mode, right? So, but that has to happen incrementally. And so you have to be able to show them that, teach them how to fish. They eat forever. Give them fish, they eat for a day, right? So the idea is that it's a slow process. But to become a master fisherman, it takes a long time, right? To really be able to, you know, to utilize it as a mastery and skill, right? So, but you have to show them that it's possible first. And to me, that conscious relaxation is the simplest form of producing, producing an effect in a situation like that, which, we just see so many people come to this in that overwhelmed state in one way or another, if not every way, right? All four territories kind of crushing down on them. So, um, in that case, you have to use the simplest thing because that's all they have the energy for. That's all they even have the mental capacity for. Everything else is just, if you try to give them burning meditation, it's just going to be one more overwhelm, one more thing to overwhelm them. Oh, now I got to learn this thing. Now I've got to learn, as simple as we think it is, it's still, to somebody who's completely overwhelmed, burning meditation is complex,
Mm.
So you've got to start with something that's so simple to show them that you can, doing something simple and consistently, that you can produce a bit of breathing room, a bit of relief from the situation that you're in. Once you have their confidence in that and they produce it for themselves, it's not for you, it's for themselves, right? That it's not like, oh, Brian, that technique was so awesome. It's like, no, you had to do it. I can't do it for you. So you applying that very simple procedure consistently for this much time produce the effect of you not suffering as much. Well, it doesn't get much better than that, because from that point you can say, oh, now I have the amount of, now I have a little space. I can actually think I could really change my situation, not just not suffer, but live, right? So but it's hard to go from completely overwhelmed to living a good life. Is that you might as well try to jump the Grand Canyon, right? It just seems so out, just so beyond most people. It's hard to even conceive of. To them, that the belief is that they can't do it. It's not possible.
Yeah, I guess if I was just gonna speak personally about it, I would just say like, I mean, what you said is very obviously it's very appropriate, to even like my state of being and my questioning, and it's almost like your response speaks to me on a personal level, um, as well as like probably a practical level for anyone that's like feeling that way. Um, and I guess, like, I guess it does, it also speaks to, um, the last point that I was making in my devil's advocate list, right? Um, and if I just like go back to it, um, I just say like, okay, I'm just gonna read it because I feel like it's appropriate, right? It says, because the internal part is so unclear to me as this proposed new cause of everything I experience, it feels just as chaotic, if not more so, than my simple Newtonian understanding of physical cause, physical effect. What you are proposing is invisible, immaterial cause, physical effect. How do I even begin doing anything with that? Furthermore, how do you expose someone to this idea in a way that doesn't cause even more chaos and concern than what they were dealing with before? And I think that that's like really part of the challenge for me in like learning these things from you and then like also applying them in my life in a way that consistently makes things better, because in some ways I feel like before I started doing this work with you, I wasn't really doing any of this stuff. And, but it doesn't mean that I wasn't affected by and utilizing the same principles in my life, right? Like, and I had many, many successes in many areas of my life, like, especially like artistically, creatively, like, sort of professionally, I guess you could say. And I feel like a lot of those things were happening like because of what we're talking about now, right? Which is like alignment of thoughts, words, and deeds, and like what you believe to be true about like, what you're doing and how you're applying your efforts and your energies and your actions and things like that. Um, but I wasn't like consciously aware of them as principles. And now I feel like in a way I've been trying to like create create some kind of like stability and um certainty in my life through a conscious understanding and application of these principles, right? And but my problem with this principle, the external is a perfect mirror of the internal, is like in some ways I feel like it has added chaos to my life in the sense that it's like another thing to be like aware of all the time and concerned about all the time. Like, what am I thinking? How am I, like what kind of energy am I generating? What kind of state of being am I in? How am I like, what's going on in my subconscious that I don't even know about because I'm not lucid dreaming all the time? Like, I know my external is a certain way and I know that I'm like overwhelmed and I know that I'm like also like applying my efforts in a way that I think is substantial. It's not insignificant, let's say,
Right.
right? Um, and yet I do feel overwhelmed. So like, um, so yeah, I guess I'm not really even. I'm just kind of reflecting on what you said. how I feel about it, but I don't really know like how it helps to bring clarity to that idea in a way that is useful necessarily. But
Right.
maybe it just points to like the in inability of like words and explanations to provide some kind of substantive like solace or transformation or whatever. But then like if that's the case, like what do you even, like what do you do? Not do
Where do
anything at
you,
all?
right,
Like
right. You
that's
have to
not.
have a, you have to have a theory that you're going on, right? And then, and then you may not understand the mechanism of it with these things. It's sometimes the transference of that or trying to get a mechanistic view of it is very difficult to achieve, right? If it's even possible, at least at the level of human being, right? But um,
So are you
but
just
you
saying
can
like,
experience anything. So, if does the experience that you produce with any of these techniques, you know, is that a better end result than just trying to do, we've all had enough life experience that we've tried to do everything, you know, Newtonian, right? Physical stuff. Keep your nose to the grindstone. You'll produce this and you'll produce that, and nothing will get in your way, and you'll overcome this and that. And we know that that's not true, right? Things always get in the way, and or a lot of times get in the way. Not always, but you have some successes, some failures. It's like things happen or don't happen, and so you know what what you're trying to say is that if I'm trying to see, I'm not trying to prove the premise. I'm just trying to experience it as if it were true. And that has been, for me, that has been the end result. So, and it's not like it's not like I'm saying that the same, that everybody has to do it this way, or this is an easier way than doing it the other way, or than just a purely physical thing. I mean, there are plenty of people that are perfectly happy just going to work, coming home, going to sleep, get up, go to work, have weekend off, get 2 weeks vacation a year, be in the lower or middle class and be perfectly happy their whole lives, produce families and have good time and whatever. I mean, that's a perfectly great life, right? So,
yeah,
um,
so what the heck am I doing? This is
unfortunately,
insane.
I
Like,
can, I don't know about you. I can only talk for myself. That seems like that's just not enough for me.
yeah, it's not. I know. Yeah.
So, so for me, it's like having this, this premise, and then, approaching it in all these different ways to not to prove it out, but to prove it out through a life that I feel is worth living. That's the end goal for me. It's like these are the things I want to experience, and here's how I'm going to go about that. And so far on certain things I have and certain things I haven't, so then I adjust my attention to those other things that I haven't experienced yet, or I've experienced fleetingly, but I want it to be more consistent.
So
So
let's say like, okay, if somebody's experiencing extreme overwhelm, then your recommendation process wise would be um to engage this practice of conscious relaxation to create more breathing space and just a sense of like relaxation, physical relaxation that would create
relief.
more mental relief and more uh, openness to whatever, something that's outside of the
Right.
experiential pattern that you're in, right?
Correct.
So it's like, let's say what you're doing is you're saying, okay, I'm overwhelmed and I can't, there's nothing that I can necessarily do physically to change this situation, but I can do something differently with and within myself physically through this relaxation exercise, that the premise being that worst case scenario, all it will do for me is give me some mental, emotional, and physical relief, or energetic also relief, in the sense that I'm creating uh, some type of space or relief for myself in the aspect of the situation that I can control, which is just me. If doing that also precipitates some type of external change, that can be considered a bonus, and B, if I can repeat that experience consistently, or if I'm conscious enough about what those changes and how they take place, I may get to glimpse to some degree the connection between my internal and my external, and start to establish a new belief system about, like, what's actually going to change things for the better for me, or what's actually, it's like you're dipping your toe into the water of belief, but you're doing it through experience by engaging something that is actually, like, in some ways antithetical to dealing with the situation purely externally and purely from a survival standpoint, right? So that's kind of like, just, it's basically an example of saying, like, I'm overwhelmed because I believe that no matter what I do physically, it is not going to ever be enough to change the external situation, that's going to change it to a degree that will give me some relief or make my life tangibly better in that
Better.
way.
Right.
However, I can engage a behavior that's based on a different belief, that entertains a different belief, which is to say, if I do something differently internally with myself, that might that might actually produce some different outcome, right? That's the belief that I'm entertaining when I engage that relaxation exercise,
Correct.
right? And the only way to make that belief that I'm entertaining an actual belief that I hold is through the practice of doing it.
And it won't even be a belief in the beginning because you
It's
have to,
not. You're not.
or even at the end of the 42 days, let's say, because, you know, that would almost be blind faith if they really said, "Oh my God, it worked." Da, da, da. Like, no, it's like you have to repeat it consistently to make it a belief,
Right.
because a belief is something that no matter what anybody or whatever, you know, external or internal things would happen to you, you would never change that, right? It's like it's solid. It's so solid that it can't be broken, right?
So a belief, like a belief is actually like, and I'm, basically quoting Bashar when he says, like, a belief is a self-reinforcing mechanism, right? So,
Yep,
like, it doesn't, like, when you are holding a belief to be true, it is, by the function of how beliefs work, it's like they're self-reinforcing. So, like,
correct.
as long as you're entertaining that belief, it will continue to, like, unless somebody comes along and, does something in front of you, like you're saying, that
Exactly.
that breaks that, and that's very, like, cathartic or potentially harmful. So,
Correct.
like, but what we can do is perform actions that entertain alternative beliefs and examine the results that come from those actions.
Correct.
So the thing that we're putting our attention on is not necessarily, like, the mechanism of beliefs, so much as the, like, parameters of the process that we engage, that will most effectively give us the opportunity to really entertain or put to the test some alternative belief, and maybe even, you know like, propose, like, different beliefs, in that process. Like, it's almost like you could look at every meditation or every exercise as being, like, tagged with a belief or several beliefs that they propose to be true. so that like when you do them, you'd be saying to yourself like, oh, you know, like I'm gonna do like you exactly, you treat the exercise or the meditation as an experiment that you are running to engage and entertain, a different belief for yourself about, how the world works, how the reality works, how you,
Right. Right. And
if that
so
makes
every
sense.
time you have, if you have a failure, then you adjust the experiment, right? Or
Right.
or you try a different one, right? But part of it is that, you have physical limitations, but you don't have as many mental limitations. You can work on your mental aspect. You can make yourself sharper. You can make yourself consistent. You can force yourself, at least in the beginning, to, say, I'm going to do this 100% until I, at the time limit that I've given myself, what is the, brutally honest end result? Do I feel better? Have things resolved? Have they not? Have they gotten worse? All options are on the table, but your desire is that it's going to give you, a bit of a, not just a physical break every day for 30 minutes, but it's going to give you, you know, that it's going to somehow, we don't know the mechanism, but somehow it's going to produce a different physical result for you, physical and mental result, really, because overwhelm is a mental state, right?
Yeah. So how do you like if you wanted to, if it wasn't just like overwhelm that you were trying to create an antidote for, um, and you wanted to actually, if you had something specific that you were like, oh, I want to change my finances, I want to change my relationship, I want to change this health aspect or whatever, like, how would you be engaging some internal process to ex- experiment with a different belief about the nature of that circumstance?
Yeah,
Or
it would be the same thing, right? It would be, you know um I have to give myself, I can't be locked into the same format that I've been locked in, right? I mean, physically that can stay the same, but I can't mentally contrive it. Like I need to see it from a different angle. I need to see a different perspective of my finances or whatever it is that I'm dealing with, right? So I'm sort of locked into the same perceptual state that I've always been, or I have been at this time. How do I change that? So again, I need to give myself some space so that I can maneuver, because I'm locked in a one-to-one relationship with this thing. How do I get a different perspective on it? How do I change myself? Because I can't change this. This is what it is.
right.
I have to change myself,
Yeah.
right? And so how do I get out of this locked up state? Well, I got to relax first, because without relaxation, I can't move, right? If I'm completely frozen, I can't get even from here to out of the chair, right? I'm completely locked down, right? So, I mean, it's like gravity will take over, but I can't move anything to get out of this chair. Okay, so I have to relax. I have to do that first, right? To be able to even get a different perceptual state on what's going on, to get a different angle on it, and no matter how many people I go to and ask for a different their view on it, that's their angle of perception in an infinite number of perceptions of that situation, and they're all going to have, they can only have their interpretation of that thing from their perceptual state, which isn't yours, right? So like you might get some hints or clues from them, but then you would have to adopt them completely from their perspective to be able to implement those things in a way that would produce a different effect for you, right? So it's such a, this is part of the intricacies of you know of being human, and being, feeling as if we're separate from the one, right? Because it's like, we can say all day long, that we know that we're not. We have an intellectual understanding of that, but the only way we can really know that is to experience that. And so the only way we can do that is to shed this physicality. And the best way to do that without jumping off a cliff is relax. Physically relax. Make it a real effort to do that with the goal of producing some movement for you. If your energy moves, you'll move too, right? Your perceptual state will move. Your perceptual states are merely energy moving at different rates. That frequency of energy, changing frequency, right? Going up or down, but it gives, every time you move it at all, it changes your perception of what's going on around you. It changes your perception of reality. So, and that's all it is. So you have to start from the most basic thing. It's like every kid that goes into the monastery at a young age, they teach them how to relax first, and
Right.
then
And
how to focus, meditate, basically, you know.
right, right. Yeah. Okay.
And
And
so
again,
then
like
it
just
grows.
yeah, and for anybody listening, like relaxation, I wish I'd mentioned this earlier, but again, relaxation is like that technical term for relaxing the physical structure of the body and the senses, ideally to the degree where they don't even exist in your experience anymore because
Right.
you're just uh, at an
Consciousness.
ideal state, you're in profound relaxation, which is just mind awake and aware, body asleep.
Correct.
It's offline. Your senses are offline. Your sense of a physicality is offline. That's like ultimate relaxation.
Ultimate
And
relaxation.
any
Right.
of the stages along the way toward anything resembling that will give you a different perceptual state and open you to increased flexibility of mind and perception, which is what you're talking about.
Right, because your total energy construct will start to shift from, it takes a lot to be active in this physicality, right? This is a
Yeah.
dense place. You have a dense energy, energy is just, your physicality is just a dense, um, uh, a more dense concentration of that same energy that's
Mhm.
flowing. So basically, when you start to relax the physical body, you know, it basically shunts that energy more into the mental realm than it does into the physical, because the physical is shutting down. It doesn't need as much to keep it coherent. You're never going to be able to do it 100%, right? Where it's like the physical dies, at least not to my
Right.
knowledge. So there's a mechanism there that won't allow you to do that, as far
That's
as
phys-
I
but
know.
but that is a good to incorporate in the definition of relaxation, is just to understand that on its most extreme scale, ultimate relax, not profound relaxation, but complete and total relaxation is death, which is
Yeah,
to
that's
say
the
like
completely shunting all of the energy that it takes, including, microscopic activity within the cell structure, shuts down, and all of that energy is diverted into the mental realm, right?
yeah,
Or the spiritual realm eventually,
right.
so that's it.
So yeah, okay.
But there are
So
lots of degrees in between there, obviously.
yeah, for sure.
So
But yeah, so
yeah.
I hope that when you were saying that stuff before, it wasn't distracting. I even muted myself for a second there because I was laughing as my release valve, but it was so profoundly illuminating to me what you were saying about it, because I feel like that what you really started to touch on there was the heart of what I was trying to get at, which is like basically you were saying, okay, if I want to change something in my life externally, the first step is to get a different perspective. And I can really relate to that. Obviously, if you have something that you want to change, you can't change it from the perception of it that you have currently because the perception that you currently have of that thing is causing you to deal with it in the way that you're dealing with it or relate to it and act on it. All of those things come from like how you perceive it, right? And so like step one, get a different perception of that thing. How do I do that? Well, through relaxation, because that opens my perceptual capacity to see it in a different way, right? So, okay, what would be like, what's step two of like,
Well, again, using, um, somebody else's, uh, if we use, like, let's just use, a lot of people know Castanata because it's a Western format, right? So it's like, I mean, they don't know the practices, but they understand, they've read the books, that it's easily accessible and, all of that.
sure.
Um, so they have a concept of like shifting the assemblage point, right? Which is basically your perceptual state at any given moment,
Hmm.
right? But there's a difference between shift and fix, right? Anybody can shift their perceptual state, right? And but the idea is, how do you then anchor it into a new place or fix it in a certain place for a certain amount of time, right? So the idea is that you have to relax. You have to, their ideal, their profound relaxation is stopping the world, right? Which means you're not naming anything. Now we're getting into the deeper end of we're getting in the reeds here, right? So it's like, but that's the idea, right? It's like, part of the end result of stopping the world is seeing energy, right? Because you're not naming anything anymore. When you're visually looking at things or hearing things, you're constantly, your brain is naming them, right? This is a bell, that's nails on a chalkboard, that's, a rake scraping across the dirt, that's the wind outside, that's a bird chirping. You can't hear something without naming it. You can't, we're designed that way. You can't see something without naming it unless you intentionally do something to make that to make that naming stop, which they term stopping the world. You stop the world by stop naming what you're experiencing. You're just
And
going to raw experience, right?
and
And
there's an
then
in
the energetic construct comes up.
and there's is there always an internal silence that comes with that stopping the world?
Yeah, because you're not naming anything. Most of the shit that we have in our brains, what they call the monkey mind and all that, is literally naming everything that we perceive as we're walking through the world. No matter if we're going to the bathroom, no matter if we're going to work and doing our jobs and doing all these things, we're constantly naming everything that we experience.
Right. And
And
that's
that sucks up 90% of our mental capacity.
right. Right. And that's one of those things about any type of like psychedelic or plant medicine or whatever is that like it basically puts you into a state where you're not naming anything anymore because like that part of your mind, that activity is like so reduced and your perceptual part is like so opened up in a different aspect that everything is new to you
You
and
can't
everything
name it.
yeah, and you're like it's like, well, that red box isn't just a red box, it's also a symbol of this and it's also this and it could be that and it's like and kind of puts you in this super flexible place. And we
That's
know
right.
that goes along with a certain degree of like neuroplasticity as well, right? It's like
Correct.
but
Correct.
too much of that, well, too much of that is just like
Now you're in the deep end.
right.
Trying to dog battle, you know. Don't worry. With most of those things, don't worry. You'll come back. But your idea of the world will be completely changed for the rest of your life, for the most part.
Right,
Unless you can, your conscious mind will convince you that it was all just a hallucination and,
right,
and you had temporary insanity,
right.
which it's really easy for it to do, right? Because that's way easier to
It even
accept.
names that experience as a kind of temporary insanity, as a almost a defense structure for your
Reality.
for reality. Yeah.
It's a defense structure for reality.
Right.
Because,
So,
if we really internalize the idea that the one just wants what you want for yourself and that every experience is valuable to you and you can't fail because you can't fail to have experience, so, it's just that, the monkey wrench in the works is that, we have that one little drop of the one in us that says you get to choose what you want. Well, there isn't a bigger incongruency in our minds, in our conscious minds, than that,
Why?
because the physical reality says that that's not true. You know,
Because of all the limitations that we come up against and all the things we don't have that we want.
in physical reality, yeah.
I mean,
So how do
yeah,
you get a
exactly.
so how do you get a different perception? Now we've established how do you get a different perceptual state of that? But then, does that bear the fruit, the end result of achieving an experience that I prefer rather than one that I'm just pressed into?
Right, but I guess my question is like, okay, you're saying like first step, get a different perceptual state of that thing or perspective on it. The second step is to fix your perception in that different place of the situation, right? But I guess in between there's the question of like, or
How do you do
maybe
that?
following that, yeah, like how do you do that? Or what if my target or my goal, once I become so flexible, is to have a different perception of it, like what should the nature of my new perception be that will be conducive to me producing the result that I want? Like
Yeah. I mean,
how do you assess that, or how do you is that, are you just going into that open relaxed place and then posing like a question or something, or are you like, how are you directing the shift of perception to get it to be what you need it to be to get the result that you want?
how do you fix it there long enough for that to be inevitable?
But how do you even like, what is the nature of the shift in your perception that you're looking for? Like that I'm worthy of that thing, or that I like have it
That's an as
already,
that may be an aspect of it, you
or
know.
well, what are the
Depending on, depending on the way that you view the world and, I mean, there's so many of them that, and many of them are kind of the same thing, but talked about in a way that makes more sense to somebody. Like if I were talking to, a physicist or a quantum physicist or somebody, like, uh, you know, somebody who deals with the, like the, infinite world theory or whatever, infinite universe theory, right? Just different dimensions, but it's infinite, right? That means that everything in this everything in the next closest universe is exactly the same, uh, you know, except the sky is green or the grass is blue or whatever, like literally so many that just, there's 20 bazillion ants on this continent, but there's less one in the next one, right? Like every little inconceivable thing is, just slightly off by a degree, right?
right?
Ideal, So, theory. So, you know, if that's the case, then there is a place where you're already experiencing that. It's already happening, right? It's already there. And, so one idea is that you're just trying to align yourself with that, which means everybody will be completely, it's not going to be some fantastical thing where, oh my God, Dustin just won the lottery. Holy shit, he's a bazillionaire now. Yeah, woo, like, and oh, how great. And now everybody's going to be after you. And, like all of these things, right? It's sort of like you occupy that space where it's already happened. And, you know, like everything that is supporting that as well. There's nothing that's like off there. So that's one way of thinking about it. Can I occupy that space? That's sort of like in a weird way, if we take the quantum part out of it, that's more of our era, right? It's like that's what Neville Goddard, that's what Ernest Holmes, that's all of these new thought people were bringing on. And then in our, again, maybe between us, it's like that's what The Secret kind of rendered down to a more simplified form without all the work, right? Very simplified, not very sophisticated. So, but it's like have that ideal in your mind, make it as clear as possible, move all your senses to that place to the point where It's basically like, you know, you're for a period of time, you're actually experiencing it as if it were physical reality. All of your senses are intact, your mental construct is there, you know what you're doing, and you're occupying that space, but you're the star of the show and, whatever. Right. And so, and if you can do that, even for a, an instant in that solid reality form, it will occur in this place, you know. So um, that's their idea, right? But all of them sort of they're all saying the same thing, just in different ways, right? That it's, if I can not just perceive it in that way or get a view of it in that way, but I can actually attract it to me in some way, or bring my, I would say, instead of attracting it to myself, bring myself to it, right? how do i how do I change myself, which is the only thing I can change? It's a difference in perspective, not even perception, right? Like, my perspective is that if I want anything to happen, I have to change myself to occupy a space where that's inevitable. you know It's not like I don't make the pool jump into me. I jump into the pool in order to get wet, right? So the end result is the same. It's just that it's a hell of a lot easier for me to do it myself than it is for, me to somehow get the pool to move over me.
I guess I guess, this just brings me back to like what I was saying before about like how do you expose how do you expose or propose this idea to somebody without it just introducing even more of a sense of chaos into their life? Because what you're describing as an exercise or as a practice of relaxing yourself, relaxing your body, and making your perceptual state more flexible, and then occupying a different, like, sensory or imaginative view of the world, um, and kind of putting yourself in that place
Mm-hmm.
is almost something that you're, to some degree, even if it's not by very much, um, like doing all day long when you're thinking about stuff and imagining different things or challenges or situations, or like,
Right.
self-talk, emoting. Like, we're basically kind of walking around doing that kind of thing like all day long. So how do you make somebody not be like, okay, I'm up,
Overwhelmed by that.
they're overwhelmed by the situation, and now they're overwhelmed by real no, oh God, I don't want to think bad thoughts now, or feel like,
Yeah,
it's
it's a
like,
trick, right? It's like, yeah, I mean, I really don't care about the bad thoughts or good thoughts. It's like more like, you know, I mean, some people will call it gratitude. Some people will call it, basically you want to uh, keep bringing yourself, find something that you can keep adjusting keep shifting that perceptual state. The relaxation will do it. Obviously, that's a physical thing that you can do every day, 20 to 30 minutes a day, end of the day, beginning of the day, whatever, right? Um, Try not to fall asleep. Try to make it a practice that you can, you know, do consciously, especially
mhm.
when you're overwhelmed. It can be real easy to consciously relax. And once you get used to it, really put yourself in such a relaxed state that you fall asleep. That's why we have little alarm clocks or whatever to keep us from not missing what we're supposed to be doing, right? It's the first step, right? Just knowing that you can shift perceptual states, right?
So, but when you're, sorry, I don't mean
No, 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 go ahead.
so, but if I just take it out to the extreme, which is like what we were talking about in the beginning about lucid dreaming and
Mm-hmm.
dreaming and the subconscious being like almost the template for this physical reality, like when you are when you are lucid dreaming, right? Let's say that that is akin to profound relaxation, or having like your senses, your imaginative senses being so um heightened that things are like uh you know real to you. That's basically all that dreaming
Sure.
is. Like, even I remember Sadhguru was talking about that in one of his videos. He was saying like um how you're basically like using your mind and your imaginative faculties like way better when you're asleep than when you're awake. He's like, you're kind of like a better, he was saying, what does he say? I was like, you're a better driver when you're sleeping than when you're awake of your own mind, in the sense that you're using it to its full capacity more.
Right.
So like, is dreaming just like the uh you know what you're talking about, elevated to its most um it's like its highest expression or something like that, or a much higher expression?
I think so. I mean, part of it is that I've come to the understanding for myself anyway, and I haven't, I haven't it could just, I mean, I'm willing to think that it could just be me, or, you know, people, not just me, like I'm the only one, but that a certain mindset that having done it both ways, both through dreaming and through the classical, like relaxation, meditation, burning, like all the step-by-step processes, which all help me to get into that lucid state more consistently. I used the experiences that I had and the skills that I had during those things that I produced doing those classical things to.
And doing those classical things include the like the sort of new thought activity of
Oh,
imagining yourself
absolutely.
already being in that situation or whatever, right?
All of
Okay.
that,
Yeah.
using all of that as, sub skill sets to enter the lucid state more frequently and more consistently and have more control while I'm there.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
so, but I don't think that it has to be done from there. It's
Right.
just that for me, that's the easy, seems to be the most consistent path. And then using what I learned there to try to do it here as well, right?
Do what
So
here? What do you mean by here? Do that
to
here.
also, like, can I use my experience there to produce the effect through like a new thought type of thing, or Neville Goddard, just, visualize it as if it's already happened and you're in it and it's as real as it is here. Can you do that and produce that effect, so in physical reality, right? So there's that. I don't bother myself with the mechanism of transference, right? Like, maybe at a later date when I'm much older, if I get that far, I might, ponder those things. But right now, I just care about the result. So if I do this, what experience am I having? What perceptual state do I need to be in? Can I hold it for any extent of time? And what effect does that have in my physical environment, if any?
For you, what does holding a perceptual state actually look like? Is it like, I'm just only going to think about this situation in this new way that I've perceived it, or only feel that I'm already in that end result, and just like, intentionally like moving through your day, like I'm in it, I'm in it, I'm in it, I'm in it, like I'm
Which
holding
is
that.
hard to do, you know? It's
Yeah, it is. It's really
easier
hard.
to, yeah, no, no, but like, look, I think we make it too complex as well, right? Like, can you, at least from that different perceptual state, elicit the feeling, if not exactly, because you haven't had that yet, but so you can't say like, what does it feel like to have $10 million? It's like, okay, like, I don't know, because I've never had $10 million. So it's like, but was there a time that you had more than enough? Anytime, in any situation, even for a very short period of time, was there ever a time when you had more than enough? And so if that's the case, okay, like, if I can change my perceptual state to imagine, use my imaginative faculties to guide myself into that scenario of the $10 million winner or whatever it is, right? Or whatever, however you would get it. It doesn't have to be the lottery. It could be you sell a painting for that much. Who knows, right? It's like, that's the idea. I don't put that many parameters. And, I'm always fond of saying, I don't hog tie the universe, right? It's like, for something that's infinite, omnipotent, all knowing, all seeing, all whatever, right? Why would you give it this one little scenario out of the billions of scenarios that it could give you to produce that one little result? No, it has to be done this way. It's like, why would I do that? I mean, it's not that it can't do it that way, but why would I restrict it that way? Instead of just saying, this is the experience I want to experience. This is the life situation I want to experience. In whatever way you want to give that to me, I just really think I want to experience that. And then let it go, leave it, just hold that. And what does that, what does that feel like? Well, can I transfer? Can I think of a time when I had, $10,000 in the bank, and I thought like, oh, I got $10,000 in the bank, it's like, and it didn't have to go right out to bills, or I got to pay my bills and I didn't have to think about it, right? Because it was just like I had enough. What did that feel like? You can remember that, right? That felt pretty good, right? It's like, unless you're one of these people that like, is, you know, cursing when you're paying your bills because they're getting the money that you, what are you going to do? If it's just sitting in the bank, what are you going to do with it? Don't be a fucking miser, right? It's like you have enough, however it came to you, you have enough, you got the relief of being able to do that is a really good feeling, right? It's a relaxed feeling. It's a, oh my God, like the weight of the world's off your shoulders feeling. Can you produce that feeling, double down from that perceptual state and ramp that up? Can you remember that and then build that up? What did that feel like? Put your mind in that place, while you're holding this other idea. Just, you don't have to keep it constant, right? Like, this is the situation, the life situation I'd like to experience. This is what I want. And I know it will be better than this, but this is the thing that I have the most. It's got to be like 100 times better than this that was really good. So, so I can build that up. So all day long, once I establish it first thing in the day, and hopefully at the end of the day, before I fall off to sleep, I fall asleep in that good feeling. And then through the day, as like if you got to set your damn clock, phone on every 47 minutes or some odd timing, every time the dinger goes off, no matter what you're doing, you just take a minute to bring up that feeling. Here's the situation I want to be in, and here's what it's going to feel like to the best of my ability. It's going to feel relief. It's going to feel grateful. It's going to feel ecstatic. It's going to feel whatever. And just bring it up. Can you bring that feeling up? Can you convince yourself that, to, elicit that emotion, right? Can you inflame yourself with that? It's going to get easier and easier the more, because little things will start to pop up in your life. That's the mystical part, right? That's the part that everybody points to and goes like, oh, and little things will start to arrive and little, it's like, yeah, okay, it's not the life situation yet, but they're just little, little breadcrumbs in the dark forest to get you to that, candy house or whatever it is without the bad witch, right? It's like, so, it's like, oh, it just adds to it, right? It's like, is it just, like, and who gives a fuck if it's just confirmation bias on your part? As long as it keeps, do you want to wallow in your suffering every goddamn day the way you've been doing? Or, who cares if it's confirmation bias at that point? You're not hanging your hat on that. You're just using it as a little bit more of like, hey, thanks for that. That, I feel, somebody brought me a cup of coffee. This is awesome. It's like, okay, it's like, that's what it's going to be like. When I'm in that category, I'm going to walk in the restaurant and they're going to give me my food for free. Or, they're going to know me and they're going to be like, oh, it's on the house today, Dustin. It's all good. It's like, those are all the things. And, not that you're desiring that, but you can just you're compounding the feeling. It's like if you can bring up that emotional state, which is that energy in motion, which you can't do that when you're constricted like this. You can't think of that or have those feelings when you're being beaten to death in a defensive position curled up on the ground. That's the difference. But it has to start someplace, right? It has to start somewhere. You have to relax in order for the perceptual state to shift. And then, compounding those emotional states, compounding the feeling of that, wherever you have to start with that, compounding will make it grow. And then, it'll be, you're moving closer and closer and closer to occupying that space. Don't worry about how it's going to happen. Don't worry about having your plan is very, the plan will reveal itself more the closer you get to that spot, right? You may have a plan and you may just, you may go after it that way, and that's fine too, right? You may have a plan to go there and how to achieve that, and that's good too, right? It's like every little thing that adds to that is going to be good, or maybe something better pops up, like you said, out of left field, right? You thought it was this and you were following it, you were doing your due diligence, but then all of a sudden something that seems completely random came out of the blue, and it's like, oh, here you go. Yeah, I know you're going that way, but how about this? How about this? This will put you here 10 times faster, right here, right now. Like, I know it just seems like chance, but like, oh, yeah. That's the mechanism that we can't know, right? That's what ineffable means. Like we just do the best that we can, and we experiment with these techniques to put us in a position to receive, to be able to, express ourselves in that situation that we want to experience, right? So it's that's all it is. So it's like every little thing is just, it's that imbibing and compounding that effect, right? And don't worry about the mechanism. It's like that's another one of those, tricky, deceptive things, right? Is like everybody wants, because we live in a mechanistic world, everybody will tell you if you don't know the mechanism, there's no way for you to do it. Well, I don't know how the fucking TV works technically, but you know what? I still enjoy watching shows on it. By their standard, they shouldn't watch TV because they don't know how it works. They don't know the mechanics behind it. So it's the same thing to me. Like that, I apply that logic, equally. So I don't know how it works, but it works and I enjoy it. And so, but I'm not mortgaging the house and putting it all on that. I'm not moving to Tibet and spending 20 years in a cave. I'm not joining some ashram or whatever, right? It's like I'm trying to do it in a way that, like, I enjoy most aspects of my life. The vast majority of aspects of my life I enjoy. So I'm just, I have, but I also have a want of a different, in some aspects, different experience of life, my life right now, today, every day, for as long as I can. I'm moving into that. And so, and so the only way that I know to do that, and what I've done to get to this point so far, is adjusting these little experiments little by little and engaging in the ones that produce and pairing off the ones that don't. And, and and compounding and doubling down on the ones that do even more, and refining them, and hopefully once we get out of the quagmire, we'll be able to express it in a way that's coherent to anybody else that wants to sort of experience that or experiment with it, even to see if it will work for them.
Okay, one last question. When as you've been going through this and talking about these things, like a lot of things have come up. Like one of the things that came up for me is just like when you were talking about perception so much, it's almost like you can see where the like phrase that people use sometimes, perception is reality,
Mm-hmm.
right? Comes up, um, or reality is nothing more than your beliefs about reality, or whatever, right? There's all these different ways of almost like expressing this principle. Why do you prefer, since I've known you, you've always preferred stating it this way: the internal is a, or the external is a perfect mirror of your internal? Is that just because like it was stated to you that way, or by a person, by another teacher, or why does that seem to be the most accurate, articulate way of stating this to you? Like,
Because I haven't been able to disprove it yet.
you mean like every time that you engage the process that we've just outlined, it proves to be true? It works.
Yep.
And and
It may not be perfect, but that's my fault, not the principal's fault, right? It's
and
just
that it,
because there's a principle doesn't mean that I can apply it perfectly every time, right? So I'm still learning as well. So
and when you learn, what is it that you are, what is it that you're learning when you don't get the results that you want? Are you just seeing like, oh, Brian, you can't relax enough? Oh, Brian, you can't imagine clearly enough? Oh, Brian, you can't hold a single thought long enough? Oh,
you
Brian, you
can't you can't fix this perceptual state long enough to enter it.
can't. But at the times where you do and you have, it's proved to be true.
Yeah. So until I can do that and it doesn't come true, that will be my example of that's a false principle. It's not a principle. It's just, something that works sometimes and not all the time.
And
But it also completely puts the responsibility on my shoulders to be able to, you know, um, experience that as true.
mm,
You know, it doesn't rely on anybody else. It doesn't rely on anybody's theology or anything else. It's literally me. So I would rather, yeah, I'm not a gambler, believe it or not, but so the only person that I would ever bet on is myself and maybe Elon Musk. But other than that, I would never bet against him. Let's put it that way. But the only person I would bet on is me. So and not because I'm so great or anything like that, but it's like I just, I because I'm not a victim. I always take full responsibility for everything that horrible that's happened to me and everything that's good that's happened to me. So it's me, so
mm,
that that is my number one belief, so this is a proving out of that idea, so um I guess the way that I think about it, if I had to really quantify it, that would be it,
mm.
you know so Probably not the answer you wanted. You were probably thinking, oh, what? I thought it was like, you know, some archangel came down and
No,
said,
but
your internal is a complete, where's your
oh
external?
yeah, 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 yeah. No, well,
It's like, oh, I wish it was.
no, 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 no. No, that's fine. I mean, I'm sure that it's. I
Because
mean,
it would still be, even if that were the case, it would still be blind faith unless I could experience it myself consistently. It
right.
wouldn't really be a belief. It would
But
still
it
be
was just
blind
basic.
faith in that thing is telling me this, even, and so if I can't experience it consistently, then it's not a belief anymore. It's just blind faith.
Right. Yeah, 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 right. Um, yeah. I just mean like, yeah, the way that that was stated to you obviously came from some other teacher or whatever, right? And then you
Yeah.
were just like, yeah, that. But then you,
Oh, I fought against it. I was like, that
but you proved it to yourself through experience, obviously,
correct.
and you felt like, oh, that's a good way of saying that,
Yeah.
or it's yeah. Um, but that it does bring me back to that thing that um I don't even remember who said it or where I heard it, but basically somebody saying like any um actions that you perform in a lucid dream from an energetic standpoint are like 10 times more powerful than doing it
At
here
least.
physically. But the idea is that like when you're in a lucid dream, you're just so dramatically changing your perceptual state in a way that you're so dramatically changing your perceptual state, and that carries such a strong resonance because it's so real and so physically, experientially tangible
Yep.
that um it's kind of like
Well, it's
it's kind of
easier
like
to drag that feeling into the physical
right.
reality,
Well,
right?
it just
Because
goes
you've
back to
actually experienced it.
right. Well, it just goes back to your whole idea of like imbibing practices in small amounts because you're trying to overcome the tendency for attenuation, right? Which is like, okay, I bring up a feeling, but that feeling has a certain attenuation where it dissipates unless I bring it up again. But and so imbibing is like striking that bell very softly over and
Yep.
over again. But like when you do it in a loop, when you do that same thing in a lucid dream, it's like you're hitting the bell so damn hard that it's just ringing for a really long time after that.
You end up with a bell that's just like you listen and it's still there and it's still there, it's
Right,
still there,
right,
and it's still
right,
there, and you can follow
right.
that.
Right.
That's kind of that idea of like, the liminal state, right? You can imagine that tone so clearly or that sound so clearly that it will literally, you, your imaginative faculty takes that over and you're following it to your destination, right? The liminal state, whatever that is for you.
Yeah.
So, or you're visualizing it so clearly, like in Diane's, case that, you know, it it may not produce the environment of a liminal state, but it will give you a guide to get you there, right? And so you're following that, and it becomes more and more tangible and opens you up into the space that liminal state that's a transitional place for you, for your mind, to your consciousness to go from this container to something else, right?
Mm.
Whether it's a simulacrum or a body of light, or or lucid dreaming or an out of body experience, all of those things, so you have to be able to unfix your consciousness from this container. you know it's not really fixed, it's your perception that it is fixed that's causing it to be fixed. We know the consciousness is non-local, right? And we say it intellectually, we understand it, but we don't feel it because we're always perceiving from here. So that's why that first exercise that, but it's such a simple exercise, but it's not easy because it's that first movement that's so difficult because you're
Relaxation.
oh well, and
That's
moving
what you're
your
talking about,
consciousness
though.
to a different perceptual
Oh, moving
place,
your,
right?
yeah, move, right,
It's
right.
so
Move.
difficult
Yeah,
because you're overcoming your whole lifetime of experience of perceiving through this.
right. So, yeah, that's kind of like, yeah, moving your consciousness to a different place in your body and perceiving that you are in that other place within you. The center of your awareness is actually in that other place, right? Is,
Yes.
yeah, I'm so glad that you said that that's hard because I feel like it's so hard.
It is hard. Well, like think about it. You have 40 years of experience of perceiving it through this. So it's like, like it's very cemented in, So
Right.
intellectually, we can agree consciousness is non-local, but how do you practice that? How do you make that a reality for you? How do you make that something that you can experience? How is that an experiential event for you? So that very, very simple exercise, which is not easy, again, it's simple but not easy. um, that's that's what I said. Like after you do that and you're consistent with it, it doesn't take long. I mean, once you get it, it's not hard to bounce around, right, and do it consistently. Once you do that, holy shit, then we got some fun coming, because it's like, nobody's convincing you that that's possible anymore, right? It, you've experienced it. So what's the big deal of doing it from here or doing it to some little simulacrum or a different, and then seeing, your consciousness can then, engage your perception, your perceptual senses from an imaginative standpoint and perceive things from outside this locale, you know, since
Yeah.
it's non-local anyway, what's the difference?
Right.
So, but that's when things really start to open up at that point, right? Because now you're entering a whole new world. And even that is just like exercise, right? It's like it's all getting you to be able to, it's all getting you comfortable with these incremental steps so that then you can do, you can achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve. You can do what you can experience the life situation that you want to experience or a spiritual experience that you want to experience. You're not tied down anymore. You're not tied to this locale, especially this locale, right? It's like that that already relaxes you even more because you're not prisoner, you're free. Then you just work out how to step into whatever life situation you want to experience at that time. That's all.